All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials World podcast. And you know what, Brian? I've been thinking, right? It is 2024 as of recording this. It might be 2025 by the time this episode releases because I'm just so banking these episodes. But you know what? I think, Brian, you and I can agree that 2024 is the best era for superhero comic book movies. Would you agree with that?
Commercially, critically, I think definitely they're going strong. They're on a high tide. I'm excited for every film that comes out. You know what else is doing great is just the comic book industry in general. The direct market is doing well. Superheroes are blowing us away at the theaters. Fucking, what's that new movie? Not Morbius. That new Kraven the Hunter is about to come out. We're all looking forward to Kraven the Hunter, the feature film. The most iconic Spider-Man character to normies, Kraven, is getting his own feature. Yeah, I love superhero movies, and I love that it's all I seem to see, even though I don't know who's watching them now.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Of course, we're in the golden age of comic book movies. And you know what? How about this week? We review the dark age of comic book movies, the shittiest era, and by a particularly shitty director, Sam Raimi. So I think this week, Brian, I think we should review Darkman, his only comic book style movie.
Do you remember when comic books tried to be fun and they tried to be engaging and there'd be jokes in them? Didn't that
Yeah,
suck?
it's fucking awful. It was like pussy bullshit. I only want dark, brooding superheroes. I want to see Superman kill people, and I want to see Batman cry about having a micro penis or something. I don't know.
I want to see Green Lantern sexually assault a villain so that they know how serious he is.
Exactly. So without further ado, let's get into some bullshit from the world's shittiest director. So once again, this is Darkman by Sam Raimi. But before we get into our review this week, Brian, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Generational Cringe Millennial Moment of the Week.
Week. All right.
Woo, yeah. All right. And Brian, you told me a little bit of what this might be, kind of, but I'm so excited.
I think you'll enjoy it, Taylor. In late July, Marvel Comics made an announcement. And just to give some context, if you weren't aware, kids are not reading comic books.
No, they're
Even
not.
though their characters are as famous, as popular as they have ever been, somehow the industry just can't seem to take advantage of that. That probably has in my opinion, is probably some fault of studios, of editors, but maybe just a natural order of things. Comic books been around for about 100 years. I loved comic books growing up. I still read, indie comic books and shit. I read old superhero comic books pretty regularly. I have not bought a new superhero comic in probably 20 years. And I'm not representative of that fan base anymore anyways, so that's not to say nobody is. Marvel, in particular, is always complaining, and that's to say writers at Marvel, I don't want to say complaining, because they're right. They're frustrated that their IP are doing so well, and that their publisher can't seem to help them sell books. That seems completely reasonable to me for the writers to say. Marvel, in late July, announced a new, I guess, innovation. They're calling it an innovation. I'd call it a gimmick. In select X-Men titles, after you buy your floppy physical comic book, normally you'd have the whole story for that issue, or it would be part of a series of chapters, right? But Marvel has this really cool idea. They're going to end every X-Men comic book with a QR code. The final page of the book that you've already bought will only be viewable by scanning the QR code on your mobile phone.
No fucking way. Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'm serious. Now, again, I'm not someone who's kept up with mainstream superhero comics. I'm this pretentious asshole. I love Golden and Silver Age comics. I read fucking Harvey Pekar and whatever hip hop family tree. I don't follow Marvel comics, so I'm already not in that demographic. But I gotta say, when I was buying comic books every week, first of all, that's a lot of money. Comic books are expensive now, a single issue, like $5 per issue, maybe. You've already bought the book, right? So there are different schools of thought. I've seen people defending this, saying, well, it's not actually the real last page of the book. It's a little bonus, so it's like you get the whole story, but then there's a little bonus for if you scan the QR code. Why?
Yeah,
I guess
those fucking post-credit sequences that Marvel is so happy about.
That's the shit that the people that like this are saying that as a comment. They're saying it's like a post-credit scene, but in a comic. Isn't that great? Now, the other big claim you'll see from defenders of this is it's a little bonus. It's not essential to the story. But I would argue, to me, if you've bought the comic, then you've already paid for that little extra page or whatever. The other thing I've heard from some readers is that there are issues of comics where a character is in the middle of a speech and they are cut off mid-speech. And you have to scan the QR code to see them finish what they're saying. So the argument that you're getting the whole book, it's so off. Because what's the big thing that we, and I mean myself here, complain about as people that love comic books, that think it's this great American art form? It's kids aren't reading comics. And there's valid reasons for that. There's things that can probably be improved upon. But kids are reading manga. Kids are reading young adult American graphic novels that aren't about superheroes now. I gotta say, I think the reason, and this is not an original observation, they aren't buying superhero comics is because they're bogged down in all this bullshit that caters to people that are my age and older, right?
You know, Brian, this really reminds me of, you know what this really reminds me of a lot, Brian? This really reminds me of always online DRM for video games. That's what this reminds me of.
Yes, which everyone loves. So why wouldn't you take a page from their book?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. It's like, you know, that thing that like everybody clearly loves and doesn't complain about all the time. Let's incorporate it into our, you know, decades and generations old fucking physical media for really no good reason.
For no reason. Because I also don't like the argument that, well, it's not essential. It's just a little page that's like a little bonus. So what that is saying to me is that that extra content isn't any good. So we shouldn't care that we need a QR code to see it. So why does it exist? And I feel like if you're saying kids don't want to pick up, it's hard for a kid, a 10-year-old kid, to just pick up a random issue of a comic and read a random issue and have a good time and know what's going on. So if you as the industry are saying we need to get kids more involved in comics so they can just pick it up and have a good time, why are you now including cell phones in that? Why are you including QR codes and making it as fucking complicated and uninviting as possible?
No, 100%. That's fucking stupid and cringe. But you know what, Brian? You know what thing that doesn't involve QR codes and isn't very cringe is this movie. Would you agree with that, Brian?
I would say this is an extremely analog core movie.
Yes. So once again, let's just get into the review here. So this is Darkman. This movie came out in 1990. Of course, just the best year in movies and entertainment of all time. I think we can all agree with that. You know, Vanilla Ice is still a household name to this day. And his song
he is.
In 1990. He actually is, which is hilarious.
He's pretty famous.
He's worth like $100 million because he fucking flips houses. What a badass.
Yeah.
That's not actually not badass.
Based king.
And speaking of base, this was rated R. This was the first R-rated comic book. Well, actually, I don't know that. There wasn't trivia for that, but
one of the first. This is an interesting thing with this is it was one of the first R-rated superhero movies. I would say Toxic Avenger is a superhero movie and beats it out.
Oh, right. So, yeah, even though that's
Toxic
obviously
Avenger,
what the fuck was that company?
Troma.
Troma. That's a Troma movie. But at the same time, like a actual big budget like superhero movie, this almost has to be the first R-rated one, right?
It is. And even when we call it big budget, that's a funny thing because this movie lives and dies.
Budget, but it's not like
it's a studio movie. It's a studio movie for sure. But yeah, pretty big budget, R-rated. The funny thing about this is it kind of is of two minds. It's both a superhero movie that wouldn't work today because audiences wouldn't take it seriously, but it also is, I genuinely think, the precursor to like the grim and gritty superhero film.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And before we get into that too much, and we'll get into that synopsis here, I want to go over some of the details here. Yeah. So this movie was directed, and the story was by, of course, Sam motherfucking Raimi. You know, we love Sam Raimi.
One of our heroes.
You know, in an old episode of this show, I think it was the Axum episode, the reviewer said, you know, this movie is worse than the Evil Dead series. You know, Evil Dead movies are so bad they're good movies, right? And I think we could argue this is so bad it's good. I'm kidding, but
I remember you being just fuming about this. No, Sam Raimi, I was thinking about it again this week in preparation for the episode. I truly think is one of the looming figures over our show. Although I don't think we've done a Sam Raimi episode before this.
No, we've mentioned him in passing, but we've never done a Sam Raimi episode.
But as far as someone who really, I think, captures that ethos that you and I both respond to, that sort of middlebrow thing that takes like the ambitions of kind of higher art and the aesthetics of trash art and puts them together, I think he's one of the best to do it.
100%.
He's on the Mount Rushmore.
Yes. And the first trivia fact I have here is Sam Raimi originally wanted to base this movie on The Shadow, but had to create the character of Darkman instead when he couldn't obtain the rights to The Shadow.
And the fun thing with that is I think Sam was briefly in discussions, or at least very early preliminary discussions for the Shadow rights. And what I have read, I think I might have even read this in Bruce Campbell's book, is that Raimi heard that Robert Zemeckis was interested in The Shadow as well. And at that point, he knew that he wasn't going to get it if Zemeckis wanted it, and he didn't want to be in conflict with such an influential director. So he just bowed out.
No, that totally makes sense. And then, speaking of other people that were creatively involved in this, so the screenplay was written by literally everybody in Hollywood, it seems like, but it was written
Mhm.
by such people as Chuck Farr, Sam Raimi once again, Ivan Raimi, Daniel Golden, and Joshua Golden, and as well Joel and Ethan Cohen, who were friends with Sam Raimi and actually lived with him at the time, did some uncredited doctoring on the finished script, and as well the script went through 12 different drafts. So everybody, this is like fucking not the Friday 13th, Freddy versus Jason script where it went through like it's
But
like
for a
almost
single
development
film,
hell. Yeah,
and what it seems like is like this was one of the first times Sam had to kind of play in the studio system. Because if you ever read the screenplays for Crime Wave or the early Evil Dead films, they're kind of incomplete. Like I think Sam kind of made up a lot of things on set, and he couldn't really do that with this movie. So he
no.
needed people to come in and help him iron out and make the screenplay into an actual story rather than
The
a
studio would have
series of...
never, yeah, no, the
Right.
studio would have never tolerated that at all.
Yeah, because that's literally how the Evil Dead films came up. They were very loosely written, and then they would just come up with gags on the set, and they would write it as they were filming, which was
Exactly.
Universal was not going to count to.
No, 100%. Speaking of people who played along with those bits as well, this movie was produced by, of course, Robert motherfucking Tappert as well, who has been Sam Raimi's close confidant.
The secret hero of this film. Pretty interesting and crazy contributions from Rob that go into Darkman.
No, totally, 100%. And didn't he direct the 2013 Evil Dead, or did he produce that one?
I think he did direct it. Yes, he didn't direct the most recent one. He produced it, but I think he did direct the 2013 one.
No,
Not
it
that
was
I
directed by
revisit.
Fede Alvarez. That's
Oh,
what it
okay.
was. For whatever reason, I thought he did.
I know his name was pretty involved, at least as the producer in the marketing. I think they really wanted to push that it had a direct tie to one of the original creators. That movie was fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't know if you saw the most recent Evil Dead movie.
I did.
I was not a big fan of that one. I'm just going to be honest.
I felt similarly as I did about the 2013 one. It was fine. There's never going to be anything else in the world that makes me feel like Bruce Campbell killing monsters under the direction of Sam Raimi makes me feel. So I'm not going to demand that anything that ever comes out live to those standards, because nothing will for me,
No, that's totally understandable. But, speaking of, once again, Sam Raimi, so I wanted to highlight, of course, Sam Raimi's amazing credits here. So, of course, he is most well known for either directing, writing, and or producing such films as the Evil Dead series for the TV show, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, The Quick and the Dead, this movie, of course, Drag Me to Hell, Oz the Great and Powerful, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is like by far his highest grossing film. That made like $12 billion. And I actually even saw it in the theaters. And I don't even like MCU movies.
No, but
and,
it's Sam, you got to see it.
No, 100%. He was also deeply involved. He was also deeply involved in the Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules TV show. So
Xena's fucking based. Great show.
Who's not based though is the guy who played Hercules. That guy is very cucked.
Yeah, Kevin Sorbo, he sucks. Fuck him. That's why this is a pro Xena podcast and not a pro Hercules podcast.
Yes, 100%. And I mentioned Chuck Farr earlier. He was the lead person who was credited for the screenplay here. So he's most well known for writing and producing such films as Sudden Impact, this movie, Hard Target, Barbed Wire, the Pamela Anderson movie, the Day of the Jackal remake, Red Planet, Shooter, which, by the way, Brian, I think we might want to watch that someday if the third time's the charm trumps Shooter.
I knew you wanted to watch Shooter.
Yeah, and the Green Hornet. I've actually never seen Shooter, but I know Trap House talked about it, and it sounded fascinating.
It just sounds like a movie that you would want to watch for the show. It's the super high couch guy.
Oh, yes, 100%. And then, of course, you mentioned Robert Tapper. So, of course, he's been, Sam Raimi's close confidant forever. So he's been involved in a lot of the same stuff. But he's also done some other things, such as Time Cop, the Grudge movies, 30 Days of Night, once again, Drag Me to Hell, the Don't Breathe movies, and once again, Xena Warrior Princess, Hercules, Spartacus. And he was also, I believe, the main producer on most of the episodes of Ash vs. the Evil Dead. So much quality here. Obviously, probably not Shooter, but there's so many quality credits that I listed on here. Some of my favorite films of all time, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can include the Coen brothers in this. I'm not as big a Coen brothers fan as a lot of people, but anything that you've got, the classic, the trio of Tapper, Raimi, and Campbell on. Campbell's involvement in this film was minimal. He did have one significant contribution inadvertently. Is something I'm going to like. Just something about their sensibility really clicks with me.
Yes, and I actually do have a very salient Bruce Campbell fucking trivia fact once we get to the synopsis here, but I want to say that real quick until we get to that point. But Bruce Campbell was definitely involved in this movie, but not as much as I think a lot of people would have wanted him. And I agree too.
Yeah.
I would have much rather had Bruce Campbell in this movie. Although before we get to the synopsis here, I will say I like Liam Neeson in this movie, but I would have liked Bruce Campbell more. But that's like saying I want a pot of gold versus a nice, pot of soup. You know what I mean?
So my gut reaction is I would have liked to see more Bruce Campbell. What if Bruce Campbell was Darkman? And I still think it would be good. I do think Neeson brings something that almost no one else could have to this part. Like I do think
he's great in this movie. I want to be very clear. He's great.
He captures sort of that lantern-jawed kind of sci-fi scientist feeling, which is not the vibe I think Bruce would have brought to this.
No, he was like
the lantern-jawed part,
No, totally. And then a few more quick facts here. So this movie is 96 minutes long. Once again, this movie's a perfect 96 minutes. Like seriously, I don't think this movie's 5 minutes too long.
Well, and that's a case where Raimi was forced to make it that long. He was fighting for 85 minutes.
Ooh, that would have...
He wanted to do 85 minutes, and the studio said, no, we need it to be 95 to 110 minutes long to make it marketable to foreign markets. And so he gave them 96, and then he cut it off. But he wanted to do 85 minutes.
I'm not going to say that I would have preferred that necessarily, but that would have also been really base.
The length it's at is fine, but he could have done it in 85 because that's what he's great at. He is very economical, and he's great at telling a story in a really tight manner.
No, 100%. And then talk about foreign markets and, of course, domestic markets. This movie made a box office, or it had a budget of $14 million, and it grossed $48.8 million at the box office. And Rotten Tomatoes, it has an 83% critic score and a 59% audience score, which I was kind of shocked that the audience score was so middling for this. Because, if you're a Sam Raimi fan, I don't know what there is to dislike about this movie.
Well, I think that's sort of the thing, right? If you're a Sam Raimi fan, which we both are, this movie's got a lot going on. That's going to work for you. But if you are a superhero fan in the current time, and maybe even at the time, maybe not. I also think there's the issue of it is tonally kind of a strange film. If you're not a Sam Raimi fan, there's lots of absurd kind of Three Stooge comedy, but then again, it's also like the darkest superhero movie ever made up to that point. I could see an audience of non-Raimi aficionados being confused by it.
Totally fair. But like I said, the fact that barely half of the people watch this movie liked it is kind of shocking to me. I'm going to be honest because I loved this.
It's so good. It's so good.
Fucking good. Well, speaking of so good, I think that leads perfectly into our synopsis here. So the movie begins with Dr. Peyton Westlake, played by, once again, Liam Neeson. And, we mentioned earlier, but Sam Raimi wanted Bruce Campbell to play the lead role, but the producers were uncertain that Campbell could handle the part. Now, I do agree with the idea of, the mad scientist thing, or not necessarily the mad scientist thing. But at the same time, though, Bruce Campbell, I love Bruce Campbell and everything.
So what Bruce says in his memoir, If Chins Could Kill, is that Raimi was really pushing to do Campbell because they were best friends. And Raimi always assumed if I'm making a movie, Bruce is going to be the lead. He's my guy, right? And Bruce, in his own account, says he was pursuing it, doing some readings with Sam early on, and he himself became aware that he didn't feel right for this role. And he had to tell Sam, he went like, hey, I'm not the right person for this role. You are going to sabotage your career by trying to stick up for me all the time.
Oh, wow. I didn't... Really?
So this is by Bruce's own account, and I believe Sam's corroborated this, is that he was like, of course, Bruce is the lead, and Campbell didn't feel like he was up to snuff for this part. And so in kind of a noble gesture for his friend, kind of stepped aside instead of taking another leading role.
That's very magnanimous of him if that's the whole story. That's awesome. It's straight up good for him.
Yeah. No, Rob, Bruce, and Sam, they're such great friends. And so there are so many cool stories like that about just their closeness and their chemistry they have together and how it's done for them over the decades,
No, 100%. It's a really beautiful story. You don't really hear a lot of those stories in Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But once again, so Peyton Westlake is a scientist developing the prototype for a new synthetic skin to help burn victims, but cannot overcome a flaw that causes the skin to disintegrate after 99 minutes. His girlfriend, Julie Hastings, played by Frances McDormand, and the next trivia fact I had here is Julie Roberts was almost cast as Julie Hastings before she got the role in Pretty Woman, which, I'm going to be real here, Julie Roberts would have been awful in this. I don't really see her being in this movie. Frances McDormand, of course, she was later in Fargo. She's a fucking phenomenal actress.
She was in Mississippi Burning right before this, yeah.
So she's a great actress, of course.
Well, Frances McDormand is great in this. There's a lot of stories about her conflicts. Not conflicts exactly. She did not enjoy filming this. She was offered it by Sam Raimi, who was an old friend of hers. And actually, I think they'd been roommates for some time.
Yes, I was reading that. Actually, Sam Raimi, Francis McDormand, the Coen brothers, and I think maybe even Bruce Campbell were all roommates at one point.
Yep, by Raimi and McDermott's own accounts. Like, this is not the type of movie she did, and she felt like she was doing this because she'd never played like a bimbo in an action adventure, and she wanted to see that side of the business.
A bimbo is a really fascinating way to describe it because I would not really describe
her words,
her
not
as
mine.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
me either, but
Because
that's her words, not mine.
because I would say she's actually a pretty, especially for like 90s
For the
superhero
time.
movies, she's actually a pretty strong character outside of the very end of the movie. She's a pretty strong character.
Like
she has agency and she sees through the bullshit. And
well, she doesn't
you know,
see through that one guy's bullshit, but we'll get there.
but to be fair, though, I will say, if that was me in that position, I don't know if I'd want to believe that somebody I've worked with would be willing to do something that evil, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
with
that's
you.
true. So yeah, Frances McDermott always said is because she's a very naturalistic actor, like not the type of actor that normally starts in a Sam Raimi picture. You know, she's not really hammy. And he kept telling her, go bigger, go bigger. And she was like, Sam, you're already over directing. I can't go bigger. No one's going to take it serious. Like she very openly says, like, I love Sam. I'm glad I did that film, but I don't like making those types of movies and I'll never do it again.
Yeah, right. But yes, anyway, so Julie discovers an incriminating document called the Belisarius Memorandum. And I'm just like, wait, there's a memorandum in the 1990s about the fucking Byzantines trying to take over Rome and Ravenna. Okay, that's my history joke. I'm out of the way for that. Look up Belisarius later. Very fascinating individual historically.
See, this is an educational program.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of educational, we'll certainly get into education next episode, if you know what I mean, Brian. Wink, wink, because I'm going to go on my rants about that.
Oh,
Yes. But anyways, which proves her boss, real estate developer Louis Strack Jr., played by Colin Friels, has been bribing members of the zoning commission. When she confronts Strack, he confesses to the bribery because it aided in his plans for designing a new city and creating countless jobs. He also warns her that the document could potentially be sought after by high-ranking criminals for its value. And I also love this scene, by the way, because the establishing shot shows that it takes place in the fucking Detroit Renaissance Center, which is the headquarters for GM and all the other like fucking Detroit car manufacturers. So there's not a whole lot of these kind of meetings happening in there. So I think that's absolutely hilarious. Although I will say though, the Renaissance Center is actually a fantastic building in downtown Detroit, but the best place to see it at is from Canada.
I mean, like, you do see a lot of that sort of American Gothic architecture thing, you know what I mean? The kind of Art Deco look that is all over this movie. And I guess it was all over every early 90s superhero movie.
Yes, and it's also a very common sight in downtown Detroit. I will say that too. So I'm assuming a lot of this movie probably wasn't filmed in downtown Detroit, but a lot of the establishing shots are very much filmed in downtown Detroit. I can very clearly tell. So following a breakthrough, Westlake realizes that the synthetic skin is photosensitive and the light causes the material to break down. However, vicious crime boss Robert G. Durant, played by Larry Drake, and also, by the way, there is a opening scene that's about 2 or 3 minutes where Robert Durant and his goons take down like another rival gang or something like that, right? Something along those lines. And Robert, Durant gets the better of them, and he gets to their like mob boss, and he starts cutting off his fingers with this cigar device.
Yeah,
it's bizarre. I don't even know. It's awesome, but it's bizarre.
That's his trademark, is that he cuts off his enemy's fingers with a cigar trimmer. And I gotta say, it's very cool, very memorable, classic crime boss villain type bit. I don't think that a finger would cut off so cleanly from one of those.
Nope, it would not. It would. It really would not.
Another thing I had read is that Drake was uncomfortable with this role and with the finger cutting because he was worried that children would emulate it. He was very concerned about that.
He had like the fucking jackass mindset. So they put the disclaimer like, this is done by professionals. Don't attempt this.
He kept coming to Sam with concerns about it, apparently.
That's so funny. That's actually really fucking funny. I love that. It's so wholesome, actually.
Yeah.
But so anyways, Robert Durant and his armed thugs suddenly invade Westlake's lab searching for the Belisarius Memorandum, which Julie had left behind. Westlake is brutally tortured while his lab assistant is murdered. Durant rigs the lab to explode and escapes with the document. Westlake is horrifyingly disfigured by the blast and also by the torture, which I love. I shouldn't say I love the torture scene in this movie, but it is awesome. Like he like has his head like fucking slammed into like these glass medicine cabinets, and it's the POV from the glass medicine cabinet, and then eventually he's dunked in like the toxic waste, like fucking Toxic Avengers. I also love the shot of him like he's like gasping for air in like the pink sludge or whatever. It's so awesome.
Sam
like this scene is probably my second or third favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's a moment where like I think there's a big horror movie vibe here. There's a like it escalates really quickly, and it's this weird thing where the tone of the film, like I said, is kind of strange because it's both campy and pretty dark. It's a pretty rough scene, and then it's like, oh my god, he's getting his head dunked in acid, and it's this weird mix of being funny and really kind of freakish.
Yes, and I will say though that even though obviously I would have liked to see Bruce Campbell in the scene because of course he's a very expressive actor, but Liam Neeson also does a very good job of being very expressive in that too. Like I had not known that he was that expressive of an actor, to be honest with you, because he's always playing like stoic fucking characters.
Yeah, I'm not a Liam Neeson fan the way I'm a Bruce Campbell fan. So my gut reaction, Taylor, is to agree with you. But when I really think about it, I think Liam Neeson was the better choice because of the sort of stoicism, because he can capture that sort of Boris Karloff, Frankenstein, sort of Phantom of the Opera energy in a way that I don't know that Campbell could have.
Maybe a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing too.
Yeah, that classic kind of tormented monster thing. I don't know if Campbell would have done that the same way. And I think that's a great addition to this movie.
No, totally. And also, I also love when the lab explodes. You know, there's that little fucking, what's the little bird thing with the water, and it keeps going back and forth, and eventually it explodes the lab because there's like gas everywhere and stuff like that. I also love when he gets blown out of it. Here. He also gets blown out of the lab, and like it's just a really funny shot. Like you just hear him go, and he's just like flying through the air on fire. It's so awesome.
It's one of those great. It's a Raimi trademark, especially from this era, of doing horrific violence as if it were a Three Stooges episode. And I think there's a bit of that in the DNA of this scene.
And also the transition from when Julie sees the lab explode and then her at the funeral wearing the funeral garb. That is an awesome transition. I love that. That's so classic Sam Raimi.
Yeah, it's classic Sam Raimi. And I think it's very directly reminds me of like a classic comic book panel transition. It's like something that someone like Steve Ditko, the creator of Spider-Man, would have done.
No, 100%. And also, if you're a fan of seeing a lot of those in a movie, definitely watch the original Creep Show, because they do a lot of those. And also, to be fair, in the TV show, they do a lot of those too. So,
I haven't watched it. I need to. I love Creep Show. I watched the first couple episodes of the series, and then I kind of stopped.
I saw the first season, and I want to say maybe the second half of the second season. It's genuinely pretty good. It's obviously not as good as the original, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's genuinely pretty good.
It's on Shudder, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's on Shudder.
Maybe I'll get Shudder again to celebrate October this year.
Hell yeah, dude. As a John Doe, Westlake is brought to a hospital and subjected to an experimental nerve procedure to eliminate the physical pain from his burns. However, as a side effect of the procedure, his emotions are amplified, also triggering an adrenal overload that gives him enhanced strength. Westlake awakes from a coma, escapes from the hospital, and discovers his plight. Realizing Julie believes he's dead, he reestablishes his lab in an abandoned building, hoping to perfect his synthetic skin to fix his scarred face and body. And the next trivia fact I had here is, Brian, believe it or not, this movie and Reign Over Me are in the same universe, because as Darkman is pushing his cart of lab equipment to the warehouse where he's building his new lab, a torn shirt with the word Camp Tamaqua is hanging from the fence, which of course was Sam Raimi and Mike Binder's fucking childhood camp.
Yep, I think I said on the Reign Over Me episode, there's a Camp Tamaqua sweater in Evil Dead as well.
Yes, so Evil Dead, Darkman, and Reign Over Me are all in the same universe.
I wonder how the Deadites felt about 9/11.
They were responsible for 9/11, Brian. Did you not see Muhammad Atta cackling as he was guiding them?
That would be an incredible film.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Overcome with his anger at his circumstances, Westlake decides to seek revenge against Durant and his thugs. Westlake finds and tortures Durant's associate, Rick, played by Ted Raimi, for information before murdering him. And by the way, is it just me, or is Durant and Rick, is there like a quasi-sexual or sexual like relationship here? Because there's some interesting moments here. It's like,
there's some dialogue there.
I would love a martini. Like, it seems very, and I'm not going to say groomy, because obviously this character is very clearly an adult, but it feels a little
queer coded. It feels kind of, there's a type of villainous queer coding that I don't think is necessarily, I don't know, it's not great. And I do think that Sam Raimi seems like the type of guy of his era who would think that was funny. Like, let's make the villain a little fruity, you know? Like, I picked up on that as well.
No, totally. And also, but just the scene where,
you know what? That's a real type of guy. That's why P. Diddy's in the news right now.
Yeah.
He hugs you from the back and the front.
Oh my God. What was that? I Love You, Man? Was that the movie? Or no, what was it? Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That's the movie that he's in, right?
Marshall. Yeah. And
by the way, that is an incredible elderly millennial movie, because he's in it. And then Russell Brand, another probable rapist, is in that movie too.
Like, and I'm not going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of bad people in I Love You, Man, but I would defend that movie to some degree. Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Wow, that is a type of humor that did not age well. Immediately was like fucking milk.
But speaking of things that don't age like milk, well, actually, it does. Westlake began using his synthetic skin to create masks of Durant's associates, while also developing a talent for impressionism. He is successfully able to pose as the various criminals, creating distrust amongst one another that eventually leads them to killing one of their own. I love this, by the way, because he's like, it's so conniving. It's almost like something out of, what's the word? Home Alone. It's almost like Home Alone, where he's like creating these little traps and stuff on top of this. Oh, it's so awesome.
A lot of people misapply the phrase anti-hero, and they just kind of mean a hero who's kind of rough. I would say Darkman is an anti-hero. There is nothing inherently good or heroic about his actions. He's actually pretty underhanded.
No, totally, yeah. Because like, even though these guys are corrupt and they're mob
No, fuck
and
him,
all that,
but
yeah, but no, totally, and also like the fact he fucks people up in this movie. I mean, we'll get to that later in the synopsis, but he fucks a lot of people up in this movie.
That's the other thing that I always think when you talk about like the edginess, the gratification of superheroes, which was underway in comic books by this point, but you know, we didn't really see in cinema for probably a couple of years. Is like he fucks motherfuckers up. As he said, he fucking kills people. It is not, there is no sort of like superheroic, I'm saving the day. He's like, I'm gonna fucking kill these guys because I'm mad at them.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they fucked him up first. Let's be clear.
Yeah, I'm not, no sympathy to the mobsters, to Durant or whoever the fuck. The other thing with him going undercover and, you know, turning the gangsters against each other is it shows another little element of this. So that Sam Raimi has always been someone who mixes genres and mixes influences, you know, and there's so much going on in Darkman, and it all comes together really concisely. But you've got this universal horror, tragic monster kind of thing. You've got this 1960s Marvel science gone wrong. What if a superhero had normal person problems thing? But then you've got this film noir element of like kind of subterfuge of gangsters, you know? It's that classic Raimi thing of taking everything that's cool, everything he loved as a little boy, and somehow cramming it into his films all together while still making it really concise and making it all fit naturally. You see it all the way from Evil Dead. I would say all the way to Great and Powerful Oz. I think he's always been really good at taking all these seemingly disparate elements and making them all flow together. And that's what I love about this mix of film noir and monster movie and like sci-fi superhero. I think Darkman is a great example of that.
Yes, and also incorporating the Oldsmobile. Is that the car?
Where was it? I was looking for it, and I think I got distracted and missed it. It is the Oldsmobile.
Yes, I will tell you when we get to that scene, but it is definitely in this movie. It's only there for a flash of a second, but it is there.
I knew it was. And I was watching out for it, and I missed it.
So back to the plot here once again. So Westlake is eventually able to recreate his own face as a mask and goes to Julie. He convinces her that he was in a coma and keeps his disfigurement from her, making up excuses to leave before the synthetic skin breaks down. I also, by the way, love the reunion scene here because Frances McDormand is, you know, she's a very naturalistic actor, but she's doing the more expressionist. She's like being very expressive. She's like in genuine shock seeing this man who she thought she was dead. And also him, you know, once again acting like the mad scientist who's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like showing his what is now unfortunately his fake side when deep down and he's trying to convince her, no, I'm back, baby, I promise I'm back, we can make things work. And of course she's like, oh yes, please.
That's, I think, not trying to say that this movie is all about like pathos and art, because it's not, and that's why I love that. But I do think there's a bit of a thing where like after I almost said his accident, after he is attacked and nearly murdered and tortured by gangsters, our protagonist changes. And initially you think it's just because he's scarred, but that's kind of his arc, right? Is that like he can't go back to being who he was because these people have taken that humanity from him. And right now he's trying to be that again. But even I think the way Neeson portrays it, there's a really good kind of subtle thing where he's like awkward trying to be this nice person that he was before. He's not quite comfortable and able to do it.
No, 100%. And you're right. He has a significant physical and emotional change. He is a completely different person in pretty much every way after the, you know, quote unquote accident, actual, like the attempted murder.
Yeah, no, the old man was murdered and he became Darkman.
No, exactly. However, during a date at a carnival with Julie, Westlake loses his temper and assaults a worker before fleeing. By the way, I think I told you this earlier. This is my single favorite scene in the movie. The carnival scene is incredible. It's like a surreal fucking like carnival show. I mean, that's what it is.
It's almost David Lynch.
Yes, there's like madhouse like stuff or like, you know, funhouse mirrors stuff going on. Everybody's laughing. It's like an acid trip, basically. Like, that's what's basically going on. And all the Dutch angles and like all the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like all the comic book like backgrounds and stuff when he like goes like crazy and like breaks this guy's fingers in half and throws it through
And
the
also,
wall. And
who
also love,
hasn't
by the way,
gotten ripped off by a carny? Like, for real.
no,
I had one steal my
very
popcorn
justifiable.
once.
But I also love when he breaks the fingers and then he screams and then fucking Liam Neeson screams and then Frances McDormand screams. It's
Yeah,
so
they all
awesome.
scream in tandem.
Like, honestly, this is by far, and I'm not just saying that because, you know, all the other scenes are crap or whatever, but this is by far, in my opinion, the best scene in the movie.
Well,
it's just everything I kind of want. Also, in one of the last movies we just reviewed, no, it was the second to last movie, our favorite scene was at a carnival too, the AVGN movie.
That's correct. So I don't know if this carnival scene is my favorite scene in the movie, but this is so Raimi, right? This scene this is almost like an exaggerated version of what people think of when they think of Sam Raimi.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
And I mean that in a good way.
The carnival has like 3 rides on it too, but there's like 1 million people. It's awesome. Although I will say though, when I was in Ireland, I actually did see one of those kind of amusement parks. There's like 3 rides and there's a bunch of people. I'm like, do people show up to see 3 rides?
I know, I think they do is the thing. Because like I was watching this with a friend on my first viewing last night and I watched it again today, but she said like, oh, that's not a real carnival. There's only 2 rides there. But I feel like when I think back to the quote unquote carnivals in rural Wisconsin where I grew up, there probably were like 2 rides there and the whole town gathered.
Okay, that's totally fair. I'm used to, you know, just being spoiled growing up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, having fucking Bay Beach that has like 12 rides.
But like when I think back to the fairs or carnivals in Suring, Wisconsin, where I went to high school, I think they did look a lot like the carnival in Darkman.
No, totally fair. I just thought it was funny to say that. So Julie follows him to an abandoned building and realizes that his face was only a mask. After tearfully confessing that she still loves him, she leaves. And also this one's great because it's once again a very classic sort of gothic horror thing where he's trying to hide his monstrous self, but she's like, but I still love you. And he's just like, no, you'll never love me. I'm ugly and I'm a monster. It's like that kind of thing.
And I think that's because he already knows, right, that it's not just skin deep that he's changed on some emotional level that she isn't aware of yet.
No. And honestly, I will say, even if I did love somebody I was with, but if they did that thing at the carnival, I'd just be like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, it'd be scary.
That scared the fucking shit out of me. Although once again, that carny deserved it. Let's be clear here. But that's not. Yeah. I'm not gonna commit to that.
They're a shifty folk.
To be fair, he should have been thrown through there, but not had his fingers broken. I think it's just a step too far.
One or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. While they were talking to Strack, Julie revealed to him that Westlake is still alive. She then discovers the Belisarius memorandum on his desk and realizes he was in league with Durant the entire time. When Julie leaves, Strack tells Durant to deal with both her and Westlake. Durant kidnaps Julie and has his remaining cohort storm Westlake's new laboratory. Westlake manages to take them out, blowing up his own lab to murder the final thug. Durant flees in a helicopter with Westlake dangling from an attached cable. And by the way, this scene right here, right? Oh, never mind. Westlake manages to attach the cable to a semi-trailer which pulls the helicopter in an explosive collision, seemingly killing Durant. This is the scene where the Oldsmobile shows up because he attaches, I think it's either just before or right after he attaches the cable to the semi-truck. He's like flying through the air and he almost like hits a car with like 2 guys like ducking in the car and they like drive away as he like almost hits the car. That's the Oldsmobile. Interestingly enough, and this has not been proven because it's literally so quick, but allegedly the 2 people in that car were Joel and Ethan Coen. There's no proof of that, but that is the thing I saw constantly doing research for this movie.
Probably.
And also, to be fair, one of the Coen brothers would later marry Frances McDormand, who he's still with to this day. So very adorable. It's almost it's kind of like a family feature going on here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
And also, this synopsis skips this, but I do want to go over a couple scenes that we missed. So one of the gang members early on who gets killed after Rick gets killed, Sam Raimi's character, Westlake, like, of course, you know, wears his mask, is able to imitate his mannerisms enough to get the drop of money from this, like, deal that goes on. And then he, like, buys a suit for the actual guy to wear, like, puts him in his hotel room, and also buys 2 plane tickets so it looks like he stole all their money, basically. And I love how they throw him out of the window of the hotel or this fucking just shitty-ass apartment complex or whatever. And also, I love when he throws him out the window, you can clearly see like there's a ball cap on the actor, on the stunt double.
This whole conceit, this whole master of disguise angle of Darkman, it's such a perfectly Raimi idea because it's so absurd and it's so comical, but it's also like kind of grotesque.
Yes. And also when the bad guy, like because he falls on the car, they like throw him out the like 10-story building or whatever. Yeah. And the woman like starts screaming and then she sees fucking Westlake's fake version. She starts screaming again and as he runs away, she keeps screaming. That's just so awesome. I love that.
Yeah. That's such a classic like B-movie scream.
No, totally. And then another one is when him and Durant, because he at one point impersonates Durant, robbing a liquor store, and that buys him enough time to impersonate Durant to screw over some of the rest of the thugs that are there. And then he's able to almost get away, but Durant, the real Durant, is able to like catch him in like one of those like circular door things, and they have a standoff there where like they have to convince one or the other that one of them's fake and one of them's real. It's so good. It kind of reminds me of Face Off a little bit.
Well, like Durant performance is so the performance of Darkman as Durant is so funny because he really captures this thing of like Drake that is captures himself like being awkward, like not really being Durant. It's such a strange performance. It's such a hard thing to articulate and such a hard thing to do. But you can tell he's having a lot of fun kind of like mimicking himself.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many great scenes in this movie. Like I don't really think there's a single bad scene in this movie, but especially when he's impersonating the thugs, those are some amazing scenes. I love
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Once again, though, so the final scene here, impersonating Durant, Westlake meets up with Strack and a captive Julie at the top of an unfinished building. Strack sees through Westlake's ruse and pulls off his mask, revealing his disfigured face to Julie. A brawl breaks out, and though injured during the fight, Westlake gains the upper hand and drops Strack to his death. And the next trivia fact I had here is Colin Friels, once again the guy who plays Strack, actually fell off the 3-story steel girder set in the middle of a fight scene and broke his femur. Yeah, that's rough. Breaking a femur, that's a rough bone to break because it's one of the few bones that if you break, you can very easily die from that because you have your femoral artery right there. So if it breaks off the wrong way, you cut that artery in half, and you got you have like maybe a minute to live at that point. It's a very rough bone to break. Trust me, that's an awful bone to break. So I hope that you got an extra paycheck after that. I hope we got some like fucking insurance payout from that. Julie tries to convince Westlake after the fight scene, of course. That'd be funny, like during the fight scene, that he's like, but we can still love each other. And it's like, no, I have to save your life. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he refuses, having been changed by his quest for revenge and new vicious nature. He slips away from Julie, pulling on a mask of Bruce Campbell and running into a crowd of pedestrians. As Julie searches for him, a disguised Westlake, once again as Bruce Campbell, watches her for a moment before walking away. And that's the end of the movie. Apparently, another trivia fact that I did not put in here, but I just want to mention real quick. So apparently, the ending tested pretty poorly with audiences because they wanted a happy ending. But here's the thing, right? There wasn't going to be a happy ending. Just like a lot of the movies where people complain there's no happy ending.
Man.
It's Darkman. He's horribly disfigured. He's emotionally and physically completely fucking different as a human being. At this point, he's killed multiple people directly or indirectly. I'm sorry, there is no rebuilding a future with this man. And he's not like the most evil man of all time or anything like that, but you cannot build a functional relationship with this kind of person. I'm just sorry, you cannot do that.
And it's funny you mentioned the test audience reactions. So coming back around to it, so Rob Tapert is our secret hero of this movie. So the film that we ultimately got is pretty close to, it's the film that Raimi made. It's pretty close to his original cut. Test audiences liked it okay. Some test audiences were put off by the sad ending, but it was doing pretty well. I think it was rating in like the high 60s. So like the audience of people that needed to like it seems to have liked it. Right?
Okay, totally fair.
So Universal decides that they need to edit it because they think they can make it better. And they edit it and testing goes down. And they edit it some more. And testing keeps going worse and worse. And it's getting closer to like the final cut date. So Rob Tapert secretly goes in 48 hours before shipping the final printout and returns the print to Sam Raimi's original cut without telling anyone at Universal. Universal finds out the day after he ships the printout and they are like furious.
Oh, no, I bet. I mean, even though we mentioned this movie had a $48.8 million box office, which definitely made this a successful movie. But obviously, no studio wants to only make a certain amount of money. They want to make a lot of money. And they thought, well, if we make it a happier ending, we could get more people in the fucking seats. But
they were going to keep chopping it up and making it a worse and worse film. And Rob Tapert basically risked his career with Universal to protect the cut of this film because he knew it was the one that worked.
Absolutely. So that is our synopsis here. And before we get into our final thoughts, I want to get into some Amazon reviews because, Brian, there were some awesome Amazon reviews. Not a whole lot of idiots. Most of the people here had actually pretty good opinions of this movie on Amazon, especially the 5-star reviews. Of course, they mentioned a lot of the things we've been talking about through this entire review. So I appreciated them quite a bit. But I did want to highlight some of these Amazon reviews here because honestly, some of these are really fucking funny. Some of these are really fucking funny.
Fantastic.
So let's get into our Amazon reviews here. So our first Amazon review here is from Future Radio, who gives us 5 stars. And the head of the review says, "This may be the greatest movie ever." And the body of the review says, "This may be the greatest movie ever." Or maybe not. it depends on what you like or don't. It's like, okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Very helpful.
Yeah. Liam Neeson of Schindler's List, Taken, and Chronicles of Narnia. Now, granted, right? A Schindler's List, sure. Taken, most definitely. People really remember Liam Neeson from Chronicles of Narnia, but okay, sure, why not?
Certain people probably do. For me, this is the Liam Neeson movie. I'm being serious. When I think of Liam Neeson, I think of Darkman.
Well, for next week, we're going to review another Liam Neeson movie, and you might think of him as a different role. Maybe not, but who the hell knows? Yeah, just like this guy. Maybe not, or whatever you do or don't want.
Or you will.
Yeah, or you will. Who knows? He stars in this amazing superhero movie that is a tale as old as time. This is the movie that inspired everything that came after it, period. If you like action, mystery, suspense with a little danger thrown in, then this one is for you. Batman ain't got nothing on Darkman. See it now. Don't wait to finish this review. Buy it, own it, watch it, and then watch it again. And honestly, except for the fence sitting at the beginning, I mostly agree with this review.
Yeah, it's fine. This guy's probably a Raimi fan. And the thing is that when you're a Raimi fan, you have to talk him up because he's got some crowd pleasers. Of course, he did Spider-Man. People love that. But like, if you're in on Raimi, you feel like you're in on a secret club and you need to like defend it. And that's the vibe I get from this guy.
No, 100%. And, speaking of people who may be in a certain club, if you know what I mean, because we'll certainly see, Plex gives us 4 stars. And the head of the review says, and this is in all caps, I'm not going to yell it, but this is in all caps, the victim who became a hero who became Darkman. And I think he meant victim, but he spelled it victim. So that's awesome. The body of the review says, Darkman is director Sam Raimi's mainstream film debut. Is that really true, Brian?
Yeah, actually, I guess it is. So we'd done Crime Wave right before this. So yeah, the Evil Dead movies, Crime Wave. Am I forgetting anything? I guess it is this.
I guess. Shit, I was just like, is that really true? But yeah, it might be true.
I'll have to double check. I think it's the Evil Dead, Crime Wave. He did some work on some other weird films. This is pretty much his foot in the door for the studio system, I think. And when you take that into account, pretty uncompromised Raimi vision in a lot of ways.
No, very true. It tells the story of Dr. Peyton Westlake, played by Liam Neeson, who is working along with his assistant on creating a synthetic human skin for people who need it. Thank you for that added thing.
As opposed to people who just want to have synthetic skin for fun.
Yeah. Westlake has a nice life with his girlfriend, Julie Hastings, played by Frances McDormand. Julie is an attorney. He like a turn, like a key, who has important documents.
Is this a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think his person's just like mentally challenged or like an ESL person. That was a special club I was talking about, which her crooked boss can't let out, and Westlake takes them to work. Julie's crooked boss, Louis Strack, played by Colin Friels, like the body part colon. That's what he put on there. He's Westlake killed because of this. So he sends out his assistant, drug lord Robert G. Durant, played by Larry Drake, to kill Westlake at work. Anyways, it just goes over a lot of the fucking synopsis here. I think there's so many spelling mistakes in here. He also gets to the point where they killed Westlake. The bird bops up and down any second. It will hit the button on the lighter. Westlake crawls over to stop him, but he is too late. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah. His lab, his work, and his entire life blown to bits. Westlake escapes from the hospital and goes to the remains of his own lab, only to find that he is burnt beyond any recognizance. But he starts up his work again and tries to get his girlfriend with his synthetic skin by making masks of his former self. Just awesome. And then he goes into the fucking... Oh, here we are. The film is dark, disturbing, witty, and action-packed. And then he gets into the fucking specs here, and I'm only going to go through one of them. Sound, Dolby Digital 2.0. Sour round. The sound sounds wonderful.
Sour round.
The house. The sound sounds wonderful. Rocks the house.
Oh, buddy, I'm glad you're enjoying the sounds.
So I wanted to have a nice ESL person or maybe mentally challenged person, because those are some of my favorite Amazon reviews. And I'm not making fun of this person.
No, it's wholesome.
This could have been like a 12-year-old too. Who the hell knows?
When you watch too many Sam Raimi films, that's what it does to your brain.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And then our next review here is from Amazon customer who gives us 3 stars. And the head of the review says 3 stars. And the bottom of the review says that, Brian, this is going to make you really mad. So this is why I put this one in here too. So the bottom of the review says, precursor to the style we see today in Deadpool, a must-see for history of film buffs.
What, because it's rated R? When Deadpool came out, people were saying, finally, a superhero movie that's R-rated, which, first of all, I don't really care if a superhero movie is R-rated. I just want it to be fun and cool. But, like, not like Deadpool.
No, and especially when it says the style. Like, what is the style? Like, the fact that the guy gets fucked up and his face is bad?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
is
that's
that the style?
like because aesthetically those are very different movies. This has a very like neo-Gothic Art Deco kind of thing, and Deadpool is not like that. It's very bright and kind of modernist feeling, and like not in the style of Deadpool, unless like you
No.
said they mean a guy with a fucked up face.
But it's like that could describe pretty much anything from any horror like themed non or like from horror themed fiction. Like seriously, that is nothing
Exactly.
specific
Yeah. Well,
style.
this movie is like paying homage to like Phantom of the Opera.
Yes, that would be like, oh man, this the fucking what's this movie was an inspiration to the God,
The
who's the
Elephant
guy
Man,
who did well that too, but who the hell did The Godfather?
Coppola.
Yeah, it's like Coppola's fucking Dracula film, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
a monster guy, like the
It's
fuck?
got a monster in it. It's got a guy with a
Yeah,
cape.
this is very influential to Two-Face and The Dark Knight. Like, it's stupid.
It sucks that anytime anyone sees anything with any sort of superhero thing, they're going to be like, oh, this is like a Marvel movie. Like,
Yeah,
it's flattened the whole genre, this whole great American tradition into this one thing.
no, fuck it, totally. And then our last review here is from Joey Stuka, who gives us 1 star. And the head of the review says, a rare blemish on the legacy of an otherwise great director. And before we get into the body of this review, how do you think that? If you like Sam Raimi, how do you hate this movie enough to think that?
I don't understand. I feel like if you are a Raimi fan, like if you're into his style, this is very Raimi, and it's gonna deliver on that.
No, exactly. And the body of the review isn't much better, but I might as well just get into it. So, Mr. Raimi, what went inside your head? A great cast and concept are squandered by awful acting, overused cliches, and a painfully bad script. I don't agree with any of that either. Bad performances? These are
the performances
genuinely
are great.
really good performances. What the fuck are you talking about?
Like, it's weird because I could see an audience member who wasn't a Raimi fan not liking this movie. Like, there are criticisms to make of this movie or like things that someone might not like about it. But if your whole deal is that you like Raimi's school of filmmaking, I would think you would love this movie.
Yeah, fucking stupid. And then the last sentence here is really fucking stupid, even on top of the stupidity here. While the producers were forced to take a bite of this fetid turd sandwich, you should not, unless you like that flavor in parentheses. So once again, it was like, if you like that or you don't, like the first guy.
I love when critics have to say, like, taste is subjective. Like, thank you very much.
Yeah, unless you want to take a bite of this shitty, smelly sandwich, unless you like that flavor, and then in that case, you might like it. And it's like, bro, what?
Yeah, what?
Sometimes we just want a turd sandwich, right? And it's like, no, I think that's a you thing.
But also, like, producers didn't take a bite of the turd sandwich. Part of the reason this movie is more fondly remembered than, say, Dick Tracy or The Rocketeer or The Phantom of the Spirit, other than that it is a better movie than most of those pictures, but is because it had a more modest budget and it made its budget back, right? Like, the producers did not lose on this movie. I don't know how you say the producers took a bite of a turd sandwich. It's a pretty modest budget and it made a significant amount of a profit.
Yes, 100%. And so that is the Amazon reviews, and that concludes our synopsis and Amazon reviews here. So final thoughts, I'll just go ahead first. We were talking about, comic book, the modern comic book landscape. We've reviewed The Phantom and stuff like that. And I will say, this is, in my opinion, significantly better than The Phantom. Once again, I didn't like The Phantom. I thought it was an enjoyable movie, but this is like a classic movie. Like, I was excited for the second rewatch of this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there's some things I missed or there's some things I want to see again. This is, once again, a great movie. If you love Sam Raimi, if you love his style, if you love just, especially the fucking Spider-Man movies that he directed, the Tobey Maguire, not Tom Maguire, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and of course the Evil Dead. There's obviously a lot of those aesthetics and motifs in this movie as well. But if you love Sam Raimi's typical directing and creative style, you will love this movie. Don't listen to this last reviewer because this guy's an idiot. I don't think this is my favorite Sam Raimi movie, probably by quite a bit, but I would say it's at least in my top 5 Sam Raimi movies. I would say at least. And Sam Raimi is one of my favorite directors, so that is a huge compliment.
Yeah, I have to pretty much echo most of what you said. I feel like, as far as my final thoughts on this, like you said, Taylor, if you are a Sam Raimi fan, if you like that mix of absurdity, of like Three Stooges gags, of gore and violence and kind of genre tropes all kind of meshed together, I mean, you're going to like this. If you like the Evil Dead movies, I think you'll like this. If you like Crime Wave, Crime Wave is probably the worst Sam Raimi movie, but I still like it. I mean, the other thing is, I think if you are a fan of superhero films, and maybe not if you're like a typically, like you just like, I love the Marvel movies so much. They're the best movies ever. You might not like this movie or might not fully appreciate it. But I'd say if you're a fan of superhero films and like kind of a fan of like the history of the superhero genre, I would say that this is a good film to watch because I do think it's a precursor to like kind of grittier superhero stuff that became more common later on. But it's also so fun and it's so vibrant and so strange. You know, it feels a bit more anarchic. Like we didn't really get into some of the weird action set pieces or even just the weird joke bits in here, but there's tons of just great little set pieces in this film that are very memorable. I do think you can see in the direction style, you know, obviously kind of early versions of the style that Raimi really refined on his Spider-Man films. This is my favorite era of superhero films. I love the Tim Burton Batman movies. I love Batman Forever even. I love this film. I think that there's this weird thing in this period where they were still learning how to make superhero movies. So some of them were kind of trash. Like The Phantom is a fun movie, but it's kind of trash. But sometimes you'd get something like this, where it's someone who clearly has a passion for the source material, has a passion for pulp heroes and for, you know, early comic books, and is thinking like, how can I do something fresh with all these things from my childhood I love? That's how I feel watching this. This is like Sam Raimi is making like a present to the little boy version of Sam that was like reading Marvel comics or whatever.
No, absolutely, 100%. You know, and on top of it, too, I know I mentioned, you know, my top 5 Sam Raimi movies. So, you know what, as an extra little bit, I think we should kind of go into that a little bit, or at least our very favorite Sam Raimi movies. So, number one for me, and I think this was pretty obvious, number one for me is Evil Dead 2. I think that's a pretty obvious pick. Evil Dead 2 is one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Like, just straight up, it's awesome. It's an improvement on the first one, and then the first one's still great, but Evil Dead 2 is like a fucking masterpiece. Like, seriously, it's so good. Yeah. And then next for me, probably after that, I would say it's probably Spider-Man 2, if I'm going to be honest with you. I love Spider-Man 2. I think it's great. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie. I think it's fucking fantastic. And then after that, I would say probably the original Evil Dead, and then Army of Darkness and Evil Dead for me are pretty neck and neck. And then I'm going to actually say this one. I think this one's a little bit better than the original Spider-Man for me. I think that's my top 5 Sam Raimi.
Okay, respectable. So my Sam Raimi top 5. So this is tough because the first three, the Evil Dead trilogy, those are probably my most rewatched films ever. They're all pretty essential to me, but if I'm ranking them, I'm going to put Darkman's my number 5. But it does crack my top 5 because it's such an insane movie. Like both times I watched it this week, Taylor, I had the same thing where I had a blast from beginning to end. Number 4 would be the first Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, my favorite comic book character. He's the only comic book character I would say that I'm somewhat of an expert of, at least on like his like classic lore. I saw this first Spider-Man on opening day. My sister took me to see it, and I was so happy during the first fight with the Green Goblin that I cried because I was getting to see Spider-Man on the big screen fight the Green Goblin. Love that movie. I think it really captures what's great about the 60s run of Spider-Man without being too bogged down in 60s tropes, you know, it's modern enough. Then you get to the top 3, and it's the Evil Dead trilogy, and ranking those is hard. My third favorite Raimi film is Army of Darkness. It's probably the weakest of the Evil Dead trilogy just because it's less violent, it's less scary, but it's still totally essential to me. Second favorite is Evil Dead. The first Evil Dead is, I think, a really scary film, really cool, surreal imagery. I think the pacing in the first Evil Dead is incredible. It's pretty neck and neck between Evil Dead 1 and 2 for me, but Evil Dead 2 just beats it out because it's a little bit more refined. I think you see some more of those Raimi camera techniques, and Ash has kind of come into his own a bit more as a character. It's more like the Bruce Campbell that we love to see now, you know?
And to be fair, that is when the Ash Campbell that we know, not Ash Campbell, is it?
Ash Williams.
Ash Williams, sorry. Bruce Campbell. The Ash Williams that we know comes into being. That's when he cuts off his hand, he gets the chainsaw and everything. So that is when he is cemented. He's not really much of a character.
He's kind of a dough-face. I mean, I love him, but he's kind of a dough-face.
He's the final boy.
Yeah, he is. He's like a final boy. He's less a hero until the very end and more like another victim of the Deadites. But again, for me, 100%. Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are pretty neck and neck. In fact, all 3 of those films are, I mean, I'm going to say at least once or twice a year, I do a single night where I watch all 3 of them in a sitting.
I mean, that's a fucking great way to go about it. I have all of them on Blu-ray, so I should do that time.
And I'm always trying to get my friends of mine, okay, let's do an Evil Dead marathon, and all my friends are like, that's just too much sitting and watching one series. And I'm like, no. Last year, I got to see at Cinemagic, there was a series they showed all of the Evil Dead films in a week. So I saw in 1 week the whole trilogy on the big screen, and it was magical. Truly magical. Again, I said at the top of the episode, Sam Raimi is, for me, he's on the Mount Rushmore. When we talk Mount Rushmore, when we talk about, you know, middlebrow culture and this confluence of influences that transcends generations, for me, me, Sam Raimi's one of the guys. It's like him and John Waters for me.
And also John Carpenter, I feel like should be up there too.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, once again, I love this movie. I love Sam Raimi. I love just basically everything about this movie. There was not a single down moment for me in this entire movie. Like, we talked a little bit about obviously the aesthetic, but and we talked about obviously about how modern comic book movies are just so gray and so dull.
Yeah.
But I just loved all the fucking colors in this movie. There's so much color. And I know that's it sounds like an insane thing to compliment, especially in a comic book movie, but this movie has so many fucking colors.
That's the whole reason that Guardians of the Galaxy was so much better than every other MCU movie, is because it dared to have some fucking color in its blood. And just to reiterate again, in Darkman, there's so many awesome little things. They're like funny scenes or crazy action set pieces that we didn't even describe. Because when you see them for the first time, you will be like psyched on it if you're a Raimi fan.
No, totally. And also, I do want to mention as well, just very briefly, because Sam Raimi, of course, did direct a movie in the modern MCU universe, which is, of course, Doctor Strange 2. And there were a lot of his sort of directing and camera styles in that movie. And people were like, oh, this fucking cheesy bullshit or whatever. Like, I saw so many people complain about it. And it's like, no, it's style. It is absolutely style. It's fucking personality.
Audiences don't know how to recognize that. Yeah, yeah.
And also, like, the scene where, he's dead and he comes back from, he's like basically a deadite, or will be the Marvel Universe version of Deadite in that movie. And people are like, oh, that's so stupid and cheesy. Doctor Strange will never become that. And it's like, just shut the fuck up. It is a movie. It's a comic book movie.
No shit. It's about superheroes. Guess what? Darkman is a dark superhero. It still should be fun. It still should be kind of crazy and wacky because they're fucking comic books. And I say this as someone who does not look down to the show. I'm going to say this. I probably love comic books as an art form and care more about their history than most of the fucking people that wear MCU shirts and talk about how great they are as adaptations. They're fun. They're supposed to be fantastical. Even the dark ones should do something that is like, wow, that makes you say, wow. They shouldn't just be this Marvel assembly line written by committee bullshit. They're supposed to be weird.
No, 100% absolutely. All right, but yes, so I think that should conclude our discussion here. So let's get into our pluggables, and then of course we'll have some final thoughts and our great bits at the end of the show that everybody loves. All right, so you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com, and as well, please follow us on both our YouTube and our Spotify channel, where we are uploading every episode simultaneously to both platforms. And as well, as always, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. Our good friends Scott, Sean, and Robert are creating an amazing series. They need a little bit more help and support to get that series going on. The first episode is, of course, on YouTube. You're free to watch it, but they need a little bit more moral and financial support to complete and really honestly start the series, if we're being honest here. So once again, please donate. And if you donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign, and, you can just comment on YouTube, send us an email. Obviously you can subscribe and follow both our Spotify and our YouTube channel first. That'd be great. But if you just tell us that you donated because of the show, we will donate to a reasonable amount, $25, we will match your donation amount.
Exactly.
So please donate to our good friends, Scott, Sean, and Robert, because we really like them. We really want to see the series go on. And you know what? We need more friends in the entertainment industry. Let's be honest here.
Really, we need more connects. As well, please follow us at Millennials, Our Old Pod on Instagram, which is now tied to our Threads account, which will be, as far as social media, a more active kind of quick post kind of thing. There isn't a lot to do on Facebook other than to spy on the Boomer Facebook groups, which is fun. But sometimes when I was talking to them, I felt a little bad. But Threads will just be a quick post way, probably more topical shit going on there. And as well, you can follow the Millennials, Our Old Facebook page, though. You can see all of the boomers that I've acquainted myself with on there. I'd also like to say that the Millennials Our Old Facebook page recently had a comment that was noticed and heart replied by David Howard Thornton of Terrifier himself.
Who, Brian, you told me was a really cool guy.
Look, I don't want to say anything like publicly mean about a guy that, as far as I know, he's not done anything bad. Here's what I'm going to say. I love Terrifier. It's going to be a great modern horror trilogy, but David's pretty silly on Facebook, in my opinion, is what I'll say.
That's totally fair. That's totally reasonable. When I saw that, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then I looked up, I was like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And to be fair, your comment, even though I only saw the fraction of the comment, I didn't actually see the whole comment. But I will say, though, 100% agree. It's subjectively true.
for listeners, this was a comment on the announcement about Terrifier 3. I don't know if anyone saw the Terrifier 3 trailer, but it involved a small child kind of being implicitly threatened by a Santa Claus Art the Clown. And I gotta say, I saw a crazy amount of Zoomers going, this is actually really sick, because that is a child, and you are making me aware that this child is going to be killed in a gory way by this character. You don't see anything in this teaser trailer, it's just a funny little bit, but people were outraged about the idea that a child would be killed by a demonic clown in a horror series called Terrifier. Presumably people who've seen the first two films.
By the way, you know who did that first? Well, not actually first, but one of the people who did it first.
John Wayne Gacy?
Well, that too. But also Rob Zombie in fucking Devil's Rejects when he threatens that kid in the truck when he's dressed up and Spalding is dressed up in the clown outfit.
Devil's Rejects is pretty based. Like, I think Zombie's kind of a hack filmmaker, to be honest, and kind of a hack musician, but that's a good movie.
Same, totally. And that is also a movie that I feel like we should almost have to review at some point because it is very elderly millennial.
Yes.
Even though it is like a grindhouse 70s throwback, it is very elderly millennial.
It absolutely is. For good and ill, I would say.
No, for sure.
But yeah,
100%.
Please kick some money to Lucifer and the Father. You can see the pilot on YouTube. It's very fun. It's very ambitious. That's the thing I want to drive in. So they do need more money than they have on previous projects to do this the way that Scott is imagining. He's talked to me in the past about it. It sounds like they have a lot of big ideas. They put a lot of thought into it, and we'd love to be part of helping them realize that. And as well, follow us on our social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, and now Threads, where you can harass me. And if you see any generational cringe, please make me aware of it.
Yes, absolutely. If you have any crooners, zoomers, just everything, like gooners, coomers, boomers, zoomers, just whatever the fuck you can find. As long as it's cringe, we want to see it. We want to fucking see it. We want to know about it so we can talk about it later.
I love it. It makes me feel so alive.
Yes. But so that is, I think, the episode here. And, speaking of Darkman, Brian, I'm going to be a man in a room, pitch dark in a little bit, because that's how I sleep the best. Because I'm tired, I need to be a dark man sleeping in a dark room. So I think you and I can both agree, Brian. Have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight. Don't let Darkman bite. It's kind of hard for him to bite because he doesn't have any lips, but he's still got those chattering teeth.
But those teeth are pretty gnarly looking.
They are. And he can talk very clearly, even though he's missing lips, which I saw people complain about. And I'm like, once again, it's a movie. Who cares? But yeah, so once again, if you see any disfigured men who can somehow pronounce everything without lips, just go back to sleep. You're clearly hallucinating.
You're on DPH.
Yeah. All right. So have a good night, everybody. And next week, we are going to get real fucking historical.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. All right. Have a good night, everybody.